time for Fullest House, first edition, where we are playing Vaettiheim. It is turn 46, and we are launching a bunch of raids this turn, so it should be an interesting one. Twice warning, of course. Always got to be twice warning your Vetti. We finished Research and Conjuration 6, mostly for the Eagles. Some other useful stuff. Enchantment 7, Serpent's Blessing. We're doing a bit of arcane probing on some of the lands that we captured, but we missed. Oh wait, hold on, there's one more down here. No, that also misses. So we'll probably do a few more of those. This is mostly in like Pangean, Abyssian land. Abyssia does have some Astral, but they were pretty busy pretty early, so there's a good chance they didn't have time to site search everything. And I was going to say that Pangea doesn't have Astral, but this is late age, and Pangea does have Astral, so maybe I shouldn't be searching Pangea's land for Astral. But in the meantime, we are sending lesser horrors. Yes, we tried to bind an ice devil. Okay, so we got one. Not really sure who this fellow is. We'll take a look at him once I look at the rest of the turn. Ritual of the Five Gates. That's kind of going to be our bread and butter, bringing in demons for a while here, hopefully, assuming we can keep the blood slave production going. And then we're also wasting some nature gems on our national summons. I can't remember if I ever corrected it, but those pigs that we summoned in, they didn't quite work out. We'll have to go back and check. They are at least stealthy, but I mixed them up somewhat with these units. So I think these are actually going to make much better bodyguards, like for some of our stealthy mages, because I think these are stealthy. But anyway, I think it's definitely worth bringing in just to check them out and see, how well they do. But that could be our only summoning of them. We shall see. And then, of course, we have our lesser horror attacks. So this is against one of Ragha's provinces. This looks like just your regular, lesser horror. Not particularly great. There's a decent chance this guy dies, but he is ethereal, and I think he has life drain or something like that. They usually have some sort of life steal or life drain, but you can see, he's not doing great, right? The skills aren't great. He only has 2 attacks. Protection is decent. Hit points are okay, but he does have fear. So I think that's really going to be the main thing that works out for us. He just needs to stay alive, and it looks like he does. So it does work out for us. And that was actually against probably 10 province defense. It looks like. So a bit more than normal, and we also knock out some random fire guy, probably a site searcher, I'm thinking. But not really sure. And then, of course, the other one that we have is on top of Pangea's capital. Normally, capitals, probably don't bother. This looks like another lesser horror. But this capital has had a lot of attacks on it. But it didn't work out. I wonder who got it. Oh, all right, there you go. Yeah, so this is a little, mini thug. Yeah, a couple mini thugs here. Cool stuff, and more than enough to take out a single casting of Send Lesser Horror, which means that we will probably also finally lose that mage that we were looking to get rid of. We also had some manual site searching, which did not work out. Pangea bringing in another prophet. We attack some independents. Oh, I forgot to mention this. Yeah, we were attacking this throne. These are more mages we want to get rid of. So all of these fellows are twice-borned, but they are also going to attempt to cheese the throne a little bit. So we are wasting, a few gems, so there should be some bugs coming out at some point. There's a lot of undead here, so we're going to put up Ravenous Swarm, and then we're just going to try to survive, basically. So, a little bit of bugs for cover. This is mostly just to mess up the heavy cavalry, so the heavy cavalry doesn't interrupt our casting cycle, which will hopefully work out. And then, there goes Ravenous Swarm. And then right body ethereal, moss body, hopefully all the protection buffs, although I think the cav is going to get through a little too fast. Maybe needed 2 castings of bugs. Yeah, they're just absolutely ripping through everyone. And sadly, the ethereal went on not our Ravenous Swarm caster, right? So Ravenous Swarm is now down because the caster that cast it is dead. There goes all of our casters. But again, they were all twice-born, so we only lost 3 nature gems. We didn't really do anything with those nature gems. So unfortunately, I can't put that one in the win column. Definitely not worth just 6 long deads. But we were looking to get rid of these mages, especially the beasts, because their magic resistance is so low, and definitely to the point in the game where there are plenty of spells that could steal them. So we take control of some province somewhere. This looks like, oh right, this is where we did the horror attack. Okay, that makes more sense. And then we have an actual raid in one of Ragha's provinces. Yeah, this is the wasteland probably closest to us. Yeah, one of these groups. They have no bodyguards or anything, just them against, looks like probably like about 10 province defense of a pretty crappy PD type, especially crappy for the late age. So I have high hopes. High hopes for this. I'm sure everything will go fine. We're going for an attack rear cheese, which is a bit dangerous because it leaves our... The other thing you can do is have like these, point buffers retreat, and that, helps keep them alive, but it does make it really difficult to subsequently raid more provinces, and they have a chance of dying in the retreat. So I was like, well, maybe we'll have enough buffs to be able to, survive, but it does not look like it. And we are struggling to kill the commander. This is an unfortunate wrinkle to Ragha's province defense, is that their commander has cold resistance 15, and all of our guys have frost brands, primarily because we don't really have any fire magic to speak of, or really much earth magic, and those are the paths that you need to make fire brands. So frost brands are kind of the chaff clearing utility, item that we have. And then let's see, have we routed? No, we actually have not routed, so there's still a chance we come away with this. Armies of Ragha are routed. Okay, so it worked out. But, this group can't raid again, and we lose the point buffer, so it looks like retreating is the way to go. And I was definitely being a bit greedy there. And then one of our scouts, this is a province that we raided with horrors last turn, but just didn't have anybody in position to capture it. So we capture it this turn. And then, yeah, this is probably Gath's, big army. I'm guessing. Yep, here it is. So yeah, and then there's really not much. There's some mundane troops in here, but I guess they chose to hide inside the citadel. Probably the Path of Wisdom, considering what they're up against, which is a long line of Gath Sacreds. I'm sure we've seen this blessed, but I'm going to have to remind myself. Okay, Regeneration and Blood Bond. Yeah, that's not bad. That's pretty standard, on Giants. It's not as good here in the late age, just because these Gibbers, yeah, they just don't have as much HP as in previous eras. But still, they're giants, so they have great strength, like pretty solid stat line. Protection is a little on the low side, but, hopefully with the Blood Bond and the Regeneration, that's not so bad. And then it looks like they're just following it up. Oh, interesting. They get multiple Sacreds. I did not know that. So they have some Sacred Infantry. They're going to care a lot less about this Bless, but the Blood Bond will make regeneration a lot more relevant on this human chassis than it normally would be, because it makes them a lot more likely to survive a hit, and then everybody gets to regenerate the damage back up. So this is a ton of these Sacreds, and I have to admit, I saw some of these Levites on our borders, and I didn't really think much of it. Like, okay, he's got some mundane infantry, no big deal, but no, these are actually Sacreds, so I need to pay a lot more attention to that. Otherwise, though, it doesn't really seem like there's a whole lot to this army. Yeah, he's got some sort of commander, but no kit on him, and like in terms of mage support, he's got this guy. I'm not sure what he's just here for Divine Blessing, really, I think, right? Because he put Fire Shield on himself. So this is also an army that's basically focused completely on the Sacreds. And I think the Bless is fine, and the Sacreds seem solid. So, like, this is a scary army, absolutely. But again, for this point in the game, like maybe he just feels that, like, well, Ragha isn't really bringing a lot of magic support either, which is true. So, like, I'm not likely to need it. Better to just get the research. Lord knows that my armies bleed research like you would not believe, so there's definitely something to be said for going the other route. But I don't know, anytime you're risking like all these Sacreds, I would definitely be nervous not having any mage support. But works out great for them here. They lose basically nothing, and they take out Arcocephali's province defense, and now they're sitting on top of a capital, and of course they've saved Patala for later. So things are looking really good for Gath, except for the fact that they've angered the rageful little goblins on their border. But, they are rageful little goblins, so that was probably kind of inevitable. So maybe not the end of the world. Right. And then, of course, we are sacrificing another twice-born mage. We're a trampler. We'll kill some stuff. Not even all the harpies, though. Ouch. Yeah, not the best chassis that we got from Transformation. But that is not the chassis that we were interested in. So we'll take a look at the results of all these deaths probably after the jump. And then we have more rating. This is going to be pretty similar to what we saw before. Yeah, in fact, exactly the same, including a lack of retreating. A much better province defense type here, though. So I'm thinking we're in trouble, especially because we're going for the attack rear cheese, but we're really going to struggle. This is, and you know, it's the little things. It's always the little things. Ouch, we take a crossbow bolt there too, despite being ethereal. Unbelievable. So, we don't quite make it to the rear, which is probably a good thing because we're much more likely to get an HP route just by killing, you know, mundane units. So, like, we can still use these raiding groups. I'm just going to need to adjust the orders so that they're attack closest instead of attack rear. The other advantage of attack closest, other than our cowardliness, is that we're much more likely to keep our other mage alive, right? Because if we attack rear, then, you know, their infantry or whatever is likely to go around us, around our thug, and kill our mage. But unfortunately, like, right, we are cowardly goblins, and he was up against a lot in his defense. So that one doesn't work out for us. Yeah, we're beaten, but we didn't lose anything, at least in the battle. Retreat-wise, everyone successfully retreats, even to the same province. So they're ready to raid again. We may have taken an affliction, but like that could have gone our way. Like we were pretty close to generating a retreat there. So like, yeah, these groups are going okay so far against like low to like moderate, you know, low moderate PD. Because I think that was 10 we were just looking at. This looks kind of like 6, maybe. This is a pretty good type, right? This is the heavy cav, heavy infantry. Ooh, this is one of our heavier groups, though. Hey, that's fortuitous. So we've sent like one of our normal squares, right, of the Berserker bodyguards, as well as one of our goads. With the normal kitting and the normal plan, the only difference is he also has some bodyguards, right? Just some wolf brothers. And it looks like they are on attack rear, which is actually going to work out for us because I think, you know, with all the berserkers here, we're going to do much better. Although, yeah, there is some danger that our, you know, Vaettiheim or whoever she is, our caster, gets targeted by the knights because they're all in one square. But let's see. Yeah, we didn't really quite make it to the commander either. So like, yeah, I don't know. This is anybody's battle. Everybody here is relatively heavily armored on the opposing side, which, you know, we've talked about how we don't love that. So we did come away with it. Ooh, and we got the commander too. All right, so yeah, I think we got this. Should be at route any second now. There we go. Yep, armies of Raghan are routed. So yeah, that one went pretty well. Although that is definitely considerably like more investment, but we don't lose anything. And yeah, that was probably 10 province defense right there. So I would say that, you know, Vaettiheim, they raid pretty well. I don't think this is an unknown thing. And then let's see, Raghan, maybe assaults a fort or raids. Oh no, I think this is Agartha's army. Yeah, that was sitting on top of Ragha's fort that's in the throne of Agartha's cap circle. And this definitely looks like it could be one of those deciding battles. So there's a bunch of Agartha's sacreds out in front here who have a lot of protection, but otherwise are, I don't know, these skills are okay. They're a little on the underwhelming side, but they do have some of these sweet crossbowmen who have the steel crossbow. I think, you know, best crossbow in the game. Although, yeah, lower precision, but like, who cares? The arrows go at, you know, all over the place anyway. Don't let the flavor text fool you. That's no disadvantage. And when I said some of those crossbowmen, I actually meant a ton of those crossbowmen. Speaking of tons of things, there are a ton of mages here as well. Well, it doesn't really look like they've been given any gems, but it also looks like they can, well, not all, but a lot of them at least. Okay, there's some of these guys in here, yeah. So a good chunk of them anyway have astrals, so we might be seeing a communion come up. Otherwise, like a lot of earth, a lot of death. There could be some skeletons. There could just be some army buffing going on. But regardless, we're going to see a lot of mage support, although not a lot of gem support. There might be a few gems in there, but not much. That said, this is going to be a somewhat mundane fight. So I think this is the only mage on Ragha's side, although I'm not super familiar with Ragha, so there could be some other mages hiding in here, but otherwise it looks just, you know, you got some cataphract style guys who have a lot of protection and are otherwise like, you know, pretty good mundane cavalry from the look of it, and pretty good mundane infantry from the look of it. A few Zayedans as well. Those guys are always a factor. With this number of crossbows, like, right? Like, yeah, I don't know. That's a lot of damage popping up. And then it sounds like skeletons. Skeletons is the play here from all those mages. So, a lot of lance charges getting eaten by the skeletons, which is good. And then I realized we must have looked at Agartha's Bless at some point, but similarly, I've forgotten it. So yeah, Shock, Fire, cool. HP plus 5 is a lot. Undead Regeneration is an interesting pick because these guys are magic beings, not undead. So probably for some summons or maybe some commanders. Charged Bodies is an unusual pick, although he does at least have a lot of shock resistance to offset that, because when you are struck, your striker takes damage, but then you also take shock damage. And then Unaging, I can certainly sympathize with the need to make old dudes in robes a little less old. I definitely saw some Charged Body going off and killing some of the cavalry, so at least part of the Bless is working out more or less how they hoped. Although I do think there's some casualties there from Agartha's Sacreds, but like I said, they're not fantastic, I think, so I'm going to take some casualties. The Zedden, of course, always dangerous, but this many crossbow bolts, especially at close range. Here's your Legions of Steel, the Earth army-wide, well, not army-wide, but large area buffs. And these infantry are quite slow, probably due to all the heavy armor. Yeah, armor encumbrance. Also, I think they're at least part Abyssian, who aren't exactly known for their speed. So the timing of it didn't really go great for Ragha. The cavalry came in and got completely wiped out, more or less, and then the infantry arrived. So a little bit of evocation spamming from some of the mages isn't going to matter too much, but with all this undead production, I think there's no way that this works out for Ragha. They were able to see off, just the few Zeddens that were there, and now it's just a question of cutting these guys down. They may lose a decent number of their Sacreds. It's a shame, Agartha, they probably just don't have the research for something like Darkness. Gifts from heaven. Always dangerous anytime you have Earth Astral. Now let's see if there's a communion at all. No, it looks like there's no communion. There's nothing wrong with that. Communions can definitely be counterproductive as well. There's definitely many casualties among Agartha's Sacreds, especially now that the rocks are coming down. I think it's just a matter of time, especially with all this undead production. So I'd say overall that went pretty well for Agartha. Although they definitely committed a lot more to that fight, and kind of surprised that Ragha chose to take that fight. And at this point, it's looking more like Ragha, either doesn't really have a plan for their mages, or I just, at this point, I can't really see why they wouldn't bring their mages out, because now they're actually under a lot of pressure. Whereas before, they could just kind of rely on their troops, to do all the lifting, and didn't need to worry about it. Now that they're up against a lot of spellcasting support, that was kind of close to free for Agartha. The crossbowmen, standard cost. There's actually fewer blind fighter casualties than I thought, and these guys aren't particularly expensive as Sacreds go. So this army is absolutely ready to keep fighting, and there's not too much left on Ragha's side now. They at least didn't lose too many mages, so I guess that's a silver lining. But yeah, kind of surprised they didn't bring out any mages really to speak of. And then here is another raid by us. We have some of our Bakemono. This is probably not enough Bakemono now that I'm looking at it. I don't know. I haven't actually used them before. Then we just have kind of a grab bag of stuff over here. In fact, yeah, this is really, I guess this is just quickness going on these guys. Okay, so maybe a water one, give them a bracelet, do some quickness. Maybe that will be better. Certainly for the attack rear sniping, quickness is going to be really nice. Combined with the Bakemono to just, soak up stuff and distract. But of course, we do have the Frostbrand problem for the attack rear, but that is what we're doing. We are pretty fast. Combat speed 44, certainly not the highest that you can get. You can get much higher than that, but respectable. We get in among the archers, which is probably a good thing because we're more looking at HP. Bakemono show. They really can do the trick, although they're pretty much up against just Lion Tribe, which are not great. So this is looking like it's going to work out for us. Catch some of the guys on the retreat, which is not ideal. Armies of Vaettiheim are routed. Do we route off first? It looks like we do. There's probably some cripple. Yep. Oh no, it's a guy with a limp. So that's rough. So that raid doesn't work out for us, but just barely. And I didn't really consider the morale problems, right, that we're likely to have. So maybe. Yeah, I'm actually not sure what we'll do about that. I'll have to think on that one. But yeah, it's kind of a lot that I don't know about a lot, but we committed a fair amount of stuff and we were turned around by just 10 province defense, although we were close. So a bit of a mixed bag for the rating, and then this is probably Storm. And so, like, yeah, I imagine there's not too much left in here. Not really much in the way of casters either. There are some gems on this guy though, so maybe some yeah, lesser fire elementals. But like, yeah, surprised that, like, why not, you know, you can break siege, and then the guys inside the fort would have joined in that fight outside. Now, I mean, I don't think a couple of lesser fire elementals would have changed the balance of the equation, but fire elementals are pretty good against skelly spam, you know, so like a little more of this, and like, yeah, maybe could have changed matters. But these guys are definitely screwed inside this fort now. And I doubt that it cost Agartha too much, although they do manage to lose 2 of their mages. And I mean, that is just the woes of old men in robes. You know, anytime that there are archers involved, it strikes terror into their hearts. And so not free for Agartha, but, you know, not too costly. And then we have some unexpected events. We found some nature gems, very nice. And then, you know, we lose some province income, as happens. Then we catch some sneaking enemies, probably just scouts. Yeah, Pythian scout, which we somehow lose some berserkers to. I gotta see this. Does he have items? Nope. Yeah, this is a complete mystery to me. I guess we must friendly fire, like, with the crossbows? Yeah. I'm not sure, like, that was a really terrible shot, whoever fired that. So maybe a reason to not patrol with the crossbowmen when we're patrolling with other stuff. But, you know, it is what it is. We at least get rid of a scout. Here we get rid of a scout, and we don't lose anybody, so that's nice. And then, of course, all of our patrolling always. And then this is kind of what we're looking for. So we get a variety of chassis back. So, you know, here's our standard size 2 mage. We can't really see, but anyway, she's just the normal, like, size, or sorry, not size 2. We're size 1. So this is our normal size 1 chassis. This is like your standard size 2 white mage, which I believe we got from the boar. So like size 3 mages and size 2 mages come back as like a normal human white mage chassis. Our size 1 mages come back as like the little white hags, the size 1 undead mages. But for the larger ones, like I believe this is a size 6, maybe a size 5. So it's like one of the big, you know, more super combatant style white mages. And then I believe this is what the size 4s come back as. So we may have actually covered every possible white mage chassis in one turn. This being Dominions, I'm sure there's a few more out there, but this covers a lot of them. So anyway, that is how you can use Twiceborn combined with Transformation to get larger than normal mages for a fraction of the cost, because you do the Twiceborning when you're a tiny little size 1. And I will catch you guys after the jump. Alright, this is the situation and what we're doing about it. More or less all the same stuff that we've been talking about for the last couple of turns. Continuing our raiding, of course. We're going to hit these 2 provinces up here with lesser horrors and also try to take them the same turn with some scouts. And then otherwise, let's see, yeah, we're going to do like a heavier raid, combining 2 raiders into this province that we failed in. And then we're going to combine, we're going to lose a mage, I think. Yeah, I believe I was planning on combining this lady with either a lesser horror cast or some other raiders, and then, yeah, switch the orders around. So it looks like she's going to be hitting solo, yeah, which is not good. So this turn has rolled. There's no way to change this, so we'll have to live with that mistake. But you never know. Maybe she'll come away with it. Regardless, as we can see, like, Raghan is probably not long for this world. They're getting attacked by a lot of people. Also, possibly this Yedden stack is dead, or possibly it's here on top of Agartha. But either way, you know, we would like to raid away a lot of cap circle provinces to reduce the resources so that it's harder for Raghan to recruit more Zayedin. We will probably give up some territory. Like, holding on to this would be difficult, but, you know, we would like to show the flag, and then, you know, the deeper that we raid, then we give up this province to Jotunheim, since we probably won't hold it anyway, but then they'll probably be more okay with us having a lot of border provinces to Raghan's capital. We might try to go for Raghan's capital. It doesn't actually look very well defended. But there's a pretty good chance it's going to get locked down by this Scrotty thug or maybe some other thugs. So we'll see. And our army is still a few turns away, at least 4 turns away. So we're unlikely to get the capital, but it's not impossible. And then we're probably also unlikely to get this throne, because I think there's a good chance that Gath just, you know, leaves some forces on here and then moves to secure, you know, this for themselves. That said, any of Gath's gains are actually our gains, so we're okay with that. Whereas like Jotunheim would prefer to have a longer alliance, although in some ways, since we're not really going to be able to team up on Illwinter, and since they are also a cold nation, so our Rimvedi are going to do better, then they're a more attractive target than I thought they were, but I also think that they're in a stronger position and possibly being played by a stronger player. Definitely seen some pretty competent mage use out of Utgard. Haven't really seen that yet from Gath, and again, maybe that's because they know they don't need it, and they're just focusing on researching. But Ragha was in sort of a similar position where they were really leaning on their sacreds and their bless. And it was like, well, are they going to bring out the mages? And so far the answer has been no, and we can kind of see the result. Again, of course, they are getting attacked by a lot of different players, but I do think, some more mage use could have made this a longer, bloodier war. But we'll see. It's not over yet, of course. They could still, there's quite a few mages in here, although a lot of them look like, the more researcher types and like not that impressive on the battlefield. So that more or less covers the Ragha situation. We're just going to continue our raiding and continue moving raiding groups up into this region. In terms of our army, we have more or less reformed it. There's no centerpiece spell in this. Now the plan is more or less just make a bunch of skeletons, and we have almost all of our infantry just on guard commander. In fact, yeah, we have all of our infantry on guard commander. We just have some crossbowmen here that are loose, and then also our siege chaff, which are loose, which is not great because they don't have a lot of ammunition, so there's a good chance they're gonna run forward. They don't have a lot of range either, but I don't know, we'll see. We're at the point now where we can get Great Eagles, which are a lot more useful than these guys just because they're a lot more mobile, so probably wouldn't be the end of the world if we lost these guys. But anyway, so yeah, front line is now just a bunch of skeletons that we're going to summon, and if someone manages to cut their way through a bunch of skeletons, they're just going to run into a bunch of point buffed Veti, both Rimvedi and Veti Berserkers. We also have our Frozen Heart casters on advance and cast spells, so they're also going to be up against a lot of Frozen Heart spam. In terms of the throne, not too worried. Really the only wild card is that Death Mage with a bunch of Death Gems. Usually I feel like the throne mages like to do Shadow Blast, which will hurt a little bit if it manages to hit our living troops, but we wouldn't love it if he did some sort of magic resistance spell. We're bringing a lot of mages, so offhand I think we're okay. I don't think there's anything that he can cast that's really going to mess us up, but always a little bit nervous about these things. But still, we're bringing a ton of this. We should roll it over. And from there, like I said, we'll either go for Ragha's capital, or the other thing is like maybe we need to start working on this because we're roughly equidistant. Like our other army is still moving forward. I still haven't really formed it up yet, being lazy about this one. We're still pretty far away. It'll be fine. It should be fine. But we do see like some units starting to mass. Like we're probably going to start getting raided again by Pythium here. And we didn't actually catch Satis's army, so I may have guessed wrong about where they went, or maybe they doubled back, but probably not since this isn't cracked. We haven't seen an attack here yet, so like yeah, we'll see. Kind of lost track of where they're going and what they're up to. But we definitely do need to get moving on this, right? Like, okay, if we don't get Arcocephaly and we don't get Ragha, there is another capital right here. There's another throne right here. So, we've talked about how we want, a chunk of this territory. We also definitely want to hang on to this territory here. I think we're building a lab here. Yeah, this turn. Probably should have done this earlier so that we don't lose out on this research. And, we can start just popping mages out of this forest. But just, yeah, the idea of building infrastructure on the front line is still kind of foreign to me. But yeah, our labs are so cheap in forests, it's like, why not? We're going to hang on to this forest one way or another. So yeah, we're still a few turns out, our little stubby legs. It takes a while, but we're moving. So all the same stuff we've talked about, just in a couple turns time. And then down here, this army is fully formed up. Same plan, also skeletons, although, we do have mass protection here. I think we have mass protection in the other army. That's pretty much just going to be standard across the board now, but more poison ward over here since we're more worried about poison from Patala. And it is winter, so next turn it'll be late winter. I believe this should still be frozen in all likelihood. There's enough cold on both sides of the borders, or rather both bordering provinces. So we'll see. There's a stack of stuff here from Gath that maybe we'll jump on, but I don't know. This isn't really looking quite strong enough to take on, what Patala has. Whether or not what we have is strong enough to take on what Patala has, we'll see. I've talked about how this is probably going to trigger a war with Gath, but also about how, that's kind of what we want at this point. We have started a fortification here. We just did some province defense since there's no misfortune here. That's nice, right? Because it's not our scales. But still, you never know when some barbarians are going to show up. We're not really leaving anybody to cover it for the moment from independence. We should be able to keep Patala busy, who's really the main one that we're worried about in terms of this fort construction getting knocked down. Also don't love that it's on the border here. I have a lot of border forts this game and in general, and maybe too much. There's a lot of reasons for these border forts. We didn't even build this one. We just found it. But this is at least a border fort that, we could control, right? There's no real reason for it other than the fact that it's there's some sites here, right on the border when we do want to cover these sites. This is 3 gems. It's also a pretty valuable province in terms of income, and it just has a lot of different connections. So I don't know, fort construction or fort placement, always a mystery. This one's going to go on the border, but it's not great to have border forts, I'm finding more and more. That more or less covers it, in terms of our movement, other than bringing up reinforcements, site searching, all that kind of good stuff. Of which there is quite a bit going on. We are summoning in more demons, and we're moving our other demon summoner over. Was thinking about also setting up shop. Well, we are going to also set up shop in Abyssia, so we're moving another potential Ritual of 5 Gates summoner up to Abyssia, but we do not have enough blood boosters. I'm finding that you really just cannot, in general, you can't have enough boosters, but particularly it seems like we need a lot of blood boosters. So our Pretender is making another blood booster, and I've talked about how this isn't a great use, but it turns out that in order for our blood 2s to make blood boosters, they also need a blood booster. So we're going to make this blood booster. We're going to hand it over to one of these blood 2s, probably this blood 2 here, and then she can make more blood boosters for our other guys to bring in more demons. We don't really have the blood slaves for this, so we might hold off on more blood boosters after this. But after this, we'll probably move our Pretender out. We'll see. There might be a little bit more forging we want to do, but I don't really love leaving him on the border here, especially without a Shade Mail, and we still haven't managed to get a hold of that Earth Death crosspath. So anyway, Ritual of the 5 Gates, we probably will try to sustain 2 casts of this a turn. To that end, our other blood hunting group is moving out, although I think I forgot to cast birds. So we'll do that next turn, bring some birds in, waste some more air gems. Speaking of air gems, not wasting them, but using them appropriately. We're bringing in some Great Eagles for Siege Chaff. We'll probably do this a few times, and then this guy will continue to site search. And the Great Eagle's first use will probably be on top of Patala, assuming everything goes to plan. And then our Demon Lord, of course, so our Ice Devil. So I talked about how, hey, these guys are, better as army casters. And of course, we got the guy. This is the Ice Devil with the fewest magic paths, and he comes with a built-in Hell Sword, so he's probably best suited for thugging. So that is what we're going to try to do. He has pretty high natural protection, although I think some of that, is ice protection, so we do have to be careful about sending him into hot places. But still, he's also a Berserker, so protection is going to go up even more once he goes Berserk, and he does a ton of damage because he's pretty strong. He is a pretty formidable thug. So we're probably just going to try to make him really killy and, increase his protection even more, and then stick him in some army, or whichever army he's needed in, and just let him loose and see if he manages to kill a bunch of stuff. Is it worth the, 88 blood slaves? Hard to say. We'll see. Jury is still out. That is what the Dancing Trident and Horned Helmet is, so those will both give him 1 additional attack apiece. And then I would really like to get elemental armor on him, but I don't think we quite have the cross paths for that yet. Still waiting for the appropriate sorceress to appear, enchantress to appear. And then also, speaking of gear, so this is our size 2 white mage, and then up here we have our size 4, and I believe this is, size 6 white mage. Size 6 white mage comes with fear built in, which is pretty nice. And we're going to need some kit for these guys as well. In terms of who to try to do this with, which of our Vetti, I'm still not totally sure, so I'm kind of just mixing it up, right? So we have a twice-born Veti here who's a Death 2, and so she's transforming, and then we're twice-borning one of the Astrals. I've been avoiding doing the Astral 1s because I've been a little bit worried about Magic Duel, right? It's like, ooh, we get a nice size 6, but then it's like it's got one Astral, very susceptible to being Magic Dueled. But we do have like enough little astral casters. Well, we're actually a little light on astral casters, partially because I've been wasting them on raiding, but also just we don't get a ton of astral, I'm finding, and I don't actually have astral on this pretender. So high astral is going to be a bit of a struggle for us, and definitely a consideration on Vaettiheim, I would say, because we're stacking up a ton of astral pearls. We may end up doing some empowerment, which is always a bit sad. But yeah, so I mean, you have a decent amount of Astral, but like Astral 2 has more or less been the highest that we've gotten out of our cap onlys, and possibly is the highest that we can. Yeah, theoretically you could get an Astral 3, but good luck. So yeah, high Astral, not really a thing that we have built into the nation, so need to do some thinking on that. But we do have a decent number of other Astral Mages scattered around, and that helps dilute, Magic Duel attacks. So, we're going to give it a shot, but probably going to stick more with the Nature 2s and the Death 2s, and maybe also the Water 2s. The Nature 2s are nice because they can do personal regeneration on themselves, which is definitely less relevant on this chassis, although definitely still relevant, but especially on the size 6 ones, very relevant. So the Nature 2s might be the ideal ones. The Death 2s can Soul Vortex with a Death Gem. And if we get really lucky, when they die when being twice-borned, they'll get an extra Path of Death, and then they won't need a Death Gem to cast Soul Vortex. So I do think that the Death 2s are a strong contender. The Water 2s, I feel like there's not a ton of benefit for a chassis like this. Water 1 is more or less enough for what you need. So anyway, we're definitely going to, try to build a couple more of these, but still not totally sure what we're going to do with them. And then I guess, let's see, research-wise, same stuff. This has not changed. So yeah, I think that more or less covers turn 46.